Pokeball takes you to part 1, Great Ball takes you to part 2, Ultra Ball takes you to part 3, but if you're here for part 4, let's get on with it! To kick off part 4, we're looking at one of the most underrated Pokemon to me, Jellicent. Seriously, outside of Speedster and my own competitive team, why do I never see this Pokemon used or even talked about? It's very competent in battle. With solid special bulk and a usable special attack stat, it can work superbly as a special sponge. The sponge part is twofold. Obviously it can absorb special attacks with ease, but also gets water absorbed for an ability, making it a fantastic switch-in. Its move pool has all the right tools to be a great wall. You got Will-O-Wisp to burn opponents to cut their attack, making Jellicent even harder to wear down, Recover to heal HP even faster, Taunt to work as an effective stall breaker, and Shadow Ball and Scald for usable stab moves. Of course, you can always go the path less traveled to make Jellicent an offensive threat with moves like Water Spout and Energy Ball. There's also the matter of Jellicent itself. Sure, its design is rather basic, but what interests me is its lore. Apparently, any ships that wander into Jellicent territory never return, and their favorite food is life energy. Does that mean Jellicent comes from the Bermuda Triangle? One of the big things Gen 4 did was give all Pokemon new evolutions, and a lot of them are really great. You got Magnezone, Weavile, and number 19 on this list, Roserade. Its design is rather graceful, appearing to be the patron of a Masquerade Ball, and also having a bouquet of roses on each hand. So yeah, graceful and definitely effective. Moving on to battle, it's your stock special tank. Solid special stats and surprisingly good speed stat help it excel in this regard. You can easily run Roserade offensively with moves like Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb, and Hidden Power, however its move pool isn't just limited to offense. I feel Roserade is better suited as a supportive type. Having both Spikes and Toxic Spikes at its disposal, it's a very reliable entry hazard setter. It has Leech Seed to sap an opponent over time, it has Aromatherapy to work as a cleric, so yeah, it definitely has diversity. Just look at mine, the nuisance of the competitive team it's on. No, seriously, with Giga Drain, Leech Seed, and holding a Black Sludge, it regenerates HP very quickly. On top of that, it also has Toxic Spikes, and that combined with Leech Seed can force the opponent to make a tough choice. Leave their Pokemon in hopes of defeating Roserade in time, or switch out to get rid of the Leech Seed only if their next Pokemon possibly poisoned or badly poisoned. Needless to say, I love annoying opponents with this tactic. Some might say this strategy is toxic. And it is. I just choose not to care. If there's one thing fans of the Pokemon series can't stand, it's roaming Pokemon. They go all over the region with absolutely no pattern and run as soon as you do encounter them, making trying to catch them an enormous chore. However, for those who have the patience to catch a roaming legendary, or just catch the Pokemon in another game, oftentimes they're rewarded with a nice Pokemon to use. Need proof? Look at Cresselia, one of the best walls in the series. I mean, I don't think you can argue with some of the best mixed bulk you're ever going to see. With those defenses and a solid HP stat to complement it, it's no surprise Cresselia's main use is a defensive Pokemon that can tank hits for days. It can cripple opponents with Toxic and Thunder Wave, slow them down with Icy Wind, recover its health with Moonlight, or you can do what I do and have it be one of the most reliable dual screeners available. The Cresselia I use on a competitive team can set up Reflex and or Light Screen with so much ease, which only helps its tanking prowess even more. And if that's not your style, Cresselia also has a unique move in Lunar Dance. With this move, Cresselia sacrifices itself, but in exchange, the Pokemon that comes out to take its place will have all of its HP and PP restored and have any status ailments removed. Dang, talk about taking one for the team. I haven't even brought up its beautiful design yet. With its body based on a swan, the crescent moon head, and the rings on its body, it's highly likely Cresselia is based off a constellation Cygnus. And here's a fun fact, I really like its ornament, so bonus points.
The history between me and Pokemon is kind of a weird one. I was one of those kids whose parents thought Pokemon was a form of demon worship, but they changed their minds thanks to some of the other parents of our church, and they quoted any proof of that. Though, at the time, I only saw the anime. I didn't get a legit game till the 3rd generation, and to this day it still has some of my favorite Pokemon. I said some! Not all. Some. Okay? Okay. Case in point, Gardevoir. Ever since I first got Emerald, she's easily on my endgame teams in every game she appears in. Well, I call her a she, but it could be a he or a she. Kind of like the old Shakespeare plays where men would play women sometimes. But with her luck of a dancer and her 6th generation type change, I can safely say she's based off of Titania from Midsummer's Night Dream, who was played by a male sometimes. Lore-wise, it's known for giving its life to protect its trainer, and even going as far as to read the trainer's future and create a small black hole to protect them. That's equal parts awesome and scary, and mine may never piss her off. Until 6th generation, it was a mono-psychic type, known for high special attack and special defense stats, along with some above average speed with 3 EVs and special attack, along with the weaknesses to the dark, bug, and ghost types. But when Generation 6 pulled the Fairy type out of nowhere, it gained a nullification to Dragon type, but with a few more weaknesses to compensate. Along with an amazing Mega Evolution, it has a large move pool consisting of trademark Psychic moves like Confusion and, well, Psychic, and more strategic moves for type coverage like all the Elemental Punches, Charge Beam, Shadow Beam, and even Focus Blast. That's not even including the fairy moves like Moon Blast and Dazzling Gleam. Its abilities consist of Synchronize and Trace, but it also has the hidden ability Telepathy, and this comes from a Pokemon whose stat total is a total of 518. Roll-wise, it can either be a special defense wall or a special sweeper, with little to no vaults if you cover said weaknesses. I heavily recommend it to have on any team. It's my favorite Psychic type. But don't look up Gardevoir on any art site. Trust me on this one.
I've always found fossil Pokemon to be really cool. Just the idea that there were these ancient Pokemon that thrived millions of years ago is fascinating. I mean, we already saw Tyrantrum earlier, and now let's talk about Aerodactyl. Like most of Gen 1's roster, Aerodactyl's design is rather simple and straightforward, obviously being based off the ancient Pterodactyl. Do I think the design works? Absolutely. It fits so well. In battle, it's also rather straightforward. An impressive 103 speed stat and respectable 105 attack surely works great as a physical sweeper. It helps that his move pool was built with this in mind. You got Stone Edge, Earthquake, Fire Fang, Crunch, and even Sky Drop if you so choose. However, being a physical sweeper isn't the only thing Aerodactyl can do well. With access to Taunt coupled with his high speed, he can work fantastic as an offensive stall breaker, crippling walls and support Pokemon before they have a chance to make a move. Or you can do what I do with my competitive Aerodactyl and make him a superb suicide lead with Stealth Rock and Taunt. Seriously, Aerodactyl works as one of the best leads I've ever seen, setting up Stealth Rock with ease and taunting a potential entry hazard setter to prevent them from using theirs. There is also one other option for Aerodactyl, his Mega Evolution. Mega Aerodactyl gains a very solid boost to its attack, speed, and defenses, helping it excel in battle even more. I also really like Mega Aerodactyl's design. As my friend N pointed out, it looks wiser, and I agree with him. Mess with this dino, and you'll be history. Ancient history. Whenever a new Pokemon trainer hits the scene, they always have a very important choice to make. Their first Pokemon. Grass, fire, or water. My first Pokemon game was Emerald, and when it came time to pick my very first Pokemon, I picked Mudkip. And eventually, it turned into number 15 on my list, Swampert. Oh man, nostalgia overload. Seriously, I could go on and on about why I love Swampert. Its design has always appealed to me. It just looks so tough and ready for action, and I love it. And you know what? In battle, it is ready for action. With very well-rounded stats and the very handy water ground typing, it can handle almost anything. And its move pool has everything it needs. Great offensive moves like Waterfall, Ice Punch, and Earthquake, some useful status moves like Rain Dance and Stealth Rock, not to mention it also has an utterly fantastic Mega Evolution. With the highest base stat total of any starter, and those stats being well distributed over its great defenses and absolutely phenomenal base 150 attack, this thing's a beast in battle! And if you think you can just outspeed it and be done with it, think again. It gets Swift Swim for an ability, meaning that in rain, it's borderline unstoppable. But you know what? I don't care about that kind of power, or how useful it is in competitive battling. The reason Swampert is so special to me is because he was my very first Pokemon. Seeing my Mudkip grow into a Marshtomp, and then Swampert was amazing. And Swampert helped me win so many tough battles and still does to this day. Anyone would feel that way about their first Pokemon, and I'm no different. Gen 5 introduced a ton of new legendaries, the most of any generation thus far, tied with Gen 4, and a ton of them are incredibly memorable. But when it comes to my favorite Gen 5 legendary, I have to go with the Thunder Genie, Thundurus. Its design is rather reminiscent of a genie, and while it's a bit on the simple side, I say it works well. In battle, Thundurus works as a fantastic offensive support Pokemon. With solid offenses and a superb 111 speed stat, and having the Prankster ability make it feared. In fact, it was uber back in 5th gen. Why is that? Well, with Prankster, any of its non-attacking moves get +1 priority, meaning crippling moves like Thunder Wave and Taunt become much more of an issue, and Thundurus is able to capitalize on this easily. But you know what? I don't use Thundurus this way. I much prefer its alternate form, Therian Thundurus. Instead of being based off a genie, Fury and Thundurus has a more reptilian-based design, most likely based off a dragon or snake, with possible influence from Quetzalcoatl from Aztec mythology. Fury and Thundurus is also very different from Incarnate Thundurus in battle, being more focused on pure offense. It's a bit slower, but has a much better special attack stat. On top of that, it has access to both Nasty Plot and Agility to buff itself for an easy sweep. In fact, that's how I use mine. Using Nasty Plot to buff it, then laying in on the opponent with Thunderbolt, Dark Pulse, and the occasional Focus Blast. Easily one of the best legendaries to come out in Gen 5, Thundurus is also one of my favorite legendaries ever, but not my absolute favorites. For all the problems Gen 4 had, one area it excelled in was the legendaries. I mean, we have the main 3 dragons, the Emotion Trio, and my absolute favorite minor legend in the series, Heatran. Its design is rather interesting and abstract, and I don't know what it is, he just looks awesome. Also, Heatran is the only legendary to have both males and females. Not quite sure how that works, but I'll roll with it. In battle, Heatran is one of the most well-balanced Pokemon you can use. Solid offense combined with solid bulk means Heatran can deal hits and tank them just as well. Sure, it has a 4x weakness to grounded, by extension the ever-common Earthquake, but just slap an air balloon on it and you're solid. His move pool also has a good number of options, ranging from Flamethrower, Flash Cannon, Earth Power, surprises like Dark Pulse, and his signature move, Magma Storm, which is basically a super fire spin. But why is Heatran my favorite minor legendary? Well, because it's so well-rounded, it's one of the most versatile Pokemon I've used on a competitive team. With a combination of Magma Storm, Dark Pulse, Flash Cannon, and Earth Power, basically nothing can resist his attacks, and his power is insane. When I send him out, I know it's time to light him up!
You know, Togetic, I hate you. After going through the very tedious process of hatching a Togepi egg and raising its happiness to the point where it can evolve, I was expecting something so much better. Instead, we got a Pokemon with an overdone typing and stats rearranged in a very insufficient manner. Yeah, it wasn't a good reward. But then Gen 4 comes along, gives that shit a shiny stone, and never mind. Well, better late than never, I suppose, but this Pokemon was well worth the wait, because Togekiss is one of the best Pokemon out there. Right away, the main thing that sticks out about Togekiss is its design. I'll go ahead and say I wasn't a fan of the rest of the line's design. Togekiss, though, it just looks so graceful. We'll get to that. The cute face combined with the Sonic-esque hair just screams adorable in my eyes, even if it is on the bigger side for a bird. Hey, I don't judge. Its Pokedex entries continually state that it shares blessings with those who respect each other, bringing kindness to each peaceful region it comes across. It's a very caring Pokemon. Well, everywhere outside of the battlefield at least. Togekiss is downright one of the most effective Pokemon I've used competitively. With a base stat total of 545, along with the stats being very well distributed, it's definitely got its edge on the battlefield. With a base 95 defense as well as a base 115 special defense, topped off with some excellent bulk, it's no secret that Togekiss can take a hit. While Togekiss's attack is a pitiful 50, its special attack is freaking insane with a stat of 120, and even a pretty decent speed stat of 80 on top of that. It's not Mewtwo levels of excellent, obviously, but you have plenty of options on what role you can make your Togekiss excel at. You could make it a bulky special attacker that hits really, really hard, with access to moves like Air Slash, Aura Sphere, Solar Beam, Fire Blast, Shadow Ball, Psychic, Ancient Power, and Dazzling Gleam. Or you can make it into a supporter with moves like Toxic, Thunder Wave, Sunny Day, Rain Dance, Baton Pass, Heal Bell, Light Screen, Reflect, Tailwind, Trick, Swagger, and Attract. This does give Togekiss plenty of in-battle utility, but that's not even touching its greatest asset. What really makes Togekiss such a threat in battle is its ability to inflict the para-flinching strategy. Para-flinching is when you first paralyze the opponent to get the speed advantage, then use a move with a high flinch chance, like Air Slash, Bite, or Iron Head, to minimize the chances of a Pokemon attacking that turn. This strategy's competence is set to overdrive with the ability Serene Grace. This gives any move with a possible secondary effect a higher chance of actually playing out. What was once a 30% flinch chance is now a 60% flinch chance. Togekiss has access to both Thunder Wave and Air Slash. Combine that with his average natural speed and that 120 base special attack stat, and you already have a good setup. But these two moves combined gives the opponent only a 30% chance of attacking each turn, and that's only if the move being used is 100% accuracy. And that's only 2 moves. Why not add Dazzling Gleam in to deal with those dragon types? Why not add Aura Sphere to deal with Ice, Rock, and Steel type weaknesses? Why not give it Nasty Plot to minimize the chances of it attacking before it faints even more? It also has access to Roost, giving it an incredibly reliable recovery. Or how about dropping the paralyzation altogether and just just pair it up with a Choice Scarf to outspeed anything it comes across. There's so many ways to build your Togekiss around this strategy that it's no wonder this thing is too good for the UU tier. This Pokemon will give your opponent trouble in some way. It's like the Pokemon equivalent to Bayonetta. Once you get it in its trap, all you can really do is sigh and try again. And the perks don't even stop there. With the newly added Fairy type in Gen 6, plenty of Pokemon got the type in exchange for their old one. One of these Pokemon was Togekiss, and it got rid of its normal typing, which was never really all that helpful to it. With this new typing, Togekiss now has resistances to Dark-type moves, Fighting types don't stand a chance against it anymore, and has a full-on immunity to Dragon-type moves, one of the most common types out there. Togekiss is more than a great Pokemon, it's a freaking devil.
Out of all the parts of this list, this one was easily the hardest to decide the order for, because this part not only had my first Pokemon ever, but also 9 Pokemon that served me exceedingly well in competitive today. But when it came to picking a top contender for this part, it was basically no contest. Easily one of the deadliest Pokemon I've ever used, Scizor is awesome. What makes Scizor so deadly, you may ask? Well, it's because it has one of the highest attack stats you'll ever see on competitive Pokemon, but it gets better. Scizor is blessed with the Technician ability, which powers up any move with 60 or less power by 50%. Now on paper, this doesn't sound all that great, but when you actually look into it, it's amazing. Getting a boost on weaker stab moves like Bug Bite and Bullet Punch means Scizor can do insane amounts of damage. But why stop there? You can use Sword Stance or Agility to buff attack or speed respectively. You can use more powerful moves like Iron Head and Superpower. Or you can use its fantastic Mega Evolution, which gives it even more power and bulk and still keeps Technician, which is awesome. But Mega Scizor is an interesting case. It's a rare case where the Mega Evolution doesn't completely outclass the base Pokemon. Standard Scizor is still perfectly viable. It's basically a choice between wanting more power and immunity to knock off and trick at the cost of taking up your Mega slot, or giving Scizor another item like a Choice Band or Life Orb and use a different Mega. I would know. I use a Standard Scizor with a Life Orb, and it makes for a deadly lead and revenge killer. Having priority and Bullet Punch can catch opponents off guard, and Bug Bite and Knock Off help round off its moveset. And if my opponent gives even one chance for my Scizor to set up with Sword Stance, they might as well be throwing the match. One of my favorite competitive Pokemon, Scizor just barely missed out in the top 10. Find out my top 10 favorites in the upcoming finale.